She married her dying fan in what she thought would be a beautiful final gesture. But when the doctor said they were wrong about his diagnosis, she discovered the real reason behind his desperate proposal. And it wasn't love. Sofia Martinez was Hollywood's golden girl at 28. With her cascading auburn hair, emerald eyes that sparkled on camera, and a smile that launched 1,000 magazine covers, she was the kind of actress who made other women both love and envy her. Sofia had starred in 3 blockbuster romances, won a Golden Globe, and had her pick of leading men both on and off screen. But beneath the glamorous exterior lived a woman who craved authenticity in a world built on pretense. Someone who longed for genuine connection in an industry where every relationship felt like a transaction. David Thompson was everything Sofia wasn't: ordinary, quiet, and invisible to most of the world. At 31, he was a mild-mannered accountant from Ohio with thinning brown hair, thick glasses, and a gentle demeanor that made him easily overlooked in crowds. But David had one extraordinary thing in his life: an obsessive devotion to Sofia Martinez that had consumed him for over 5 years. His apartment was a shrine to her career. Walls covered with movie posters, magazine clippings, and photographs from every red carpet appearance. He attended every premiere, knew every interview by heart, and had spent his life savings following her career across the country. What David also had, according to his doctors, was stage 4 pancreatic cancer with less than 6 months to live. The letter arrived at Sofia's talent agency on a Tuesday morning, buried among hundreds of fan mail pieces that her assistant usually filtered. But something about the handwriting, careful, desperate, honest, made Jessica, her assistant, place it directly on Sofia's desk. "Dear Sofia," the letter began, "I know you don't know me, but you've been the light of my life for 5 years. I'm dying, and I have one last wish. Would you consider meeting me? I don't want anything from you except the chance to tell you how much your work has meant to me. I understand if this is impossible, but I had to try. With all my love, David Thompson." Enclosed were medical records, test results, and a photograph of David in a hospital bed, looking frail, but smiling hopefully at the camera. Sofia was moved. In a world where fans often wanted pieces of her, autographs, selfies, access to her life, here was someone who simply wanted to express gratitude. Against her publicist's advice, she agreed to visit David at his home in Columbus, Ohio. The meeting was everything Sofia hadn't expected. David's small apartment was indeed a monument to her career, but it was arranged with such care and genuine appreciation that it felt more like a museum than a stalker's den. David himself was soft-spoken, intelligent, and surprisingly insightful about her performances. He spoke about her characters with the depth of a film scholar, understanding nuances in her acting that even some directors had missed. "You bring such honesty to every role," David said during their 3-hour conversation. "In Midnight in Venice, when your character realizes she's been living a lie, the way your eyes change, it was like watching someone's soul break and rebuild itself simultaneously." Sofia was genuinely touched. Here was someone who saw her work, really saw it, in ways that critics and colleagues often missed. As she prepared to leave, David made his request. "Sofia, I know this is insane, but I have to ask. My dream was always to be married, to have someone who chose me. I know I'm dying. I know it's crazy, but would you marry me? Just for whatever time I have left?" The request should have sent Sofia running. Instead, she found herself considering it. David wasn't asking for her money, her fame, or her body. He was asking for her companionship during his final months, and something about his quiet dignity moved her deeply. "David, that's a huge thing to ask." "I know," he said quickly. "I know it's selfish and impossible, but I thought maybe if it would make my last months meaningful, and if it might give you the chance to do something purely good in a world that's probably showing you too much artificial nonsense." Sofia saw something in David's eyes that she rarely encountered in Hollywood. Complete sincerity. No hidden agenda, no calculation. Just a dying man's simple wish to experience love before leaving the world. 3 weeks later, they were married in a small ceremony at David's local church, with only his sister and Sofia's assistant as witnesses. The media went crazy when the story broke, but Sofia's publicist spun it perfectly. A beloved actress bringing joy to a dying fan's final days. The public ate it up, praising Sophia's kindness and calling it the most romantic gesture in Hollywood history. David moved into Sophia's Malibu home, and to her surprise, she found herself genuinely enjoying his company. He was well-read, funny in a quiet way, and incredibly thoughtful. He cooked her breakfast every morning, listened to her talk about her work without trying to give her career advice, and created a peaceful sanctuary in her usually chaotic life. But most importantly, David made Sophia feel seen, not as a celebrity or a fantasy, but as a person. He asked about her childhood, her fears, her dreams beyond acting. He held her when she cried about the pressure of fame, and he celebrated her small victories that no one else even noticed. For the first time in years, Sophia began to understand what genuine love might feel like. As weeks turned into months, something unexpected happened. David's condition seemed to stabilize. His energy returned, his color improved, and his latest scan showed the cancer wasn't progressing as aggressively as predicted. Sophia dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, they might have more time together than anyone had thought. "Maybe we'll get our miracle," she whispered to David one evening as they watched the sunset from their deck. "Maybe we will," David replied, but something in his voice seemed different, less hopeful than she expected, more anxious. The miracle came 6 months later, but it wasn't what either of them expected. Dr. Patricia Williams, David's oncologist, called him into her office with news that should have been cause for celebration. "David, I have to apologize. We've reviewed your scans, consulted with specialists across the country, and we've made a terrible mistake." Sophia's heart pounded. What kind of mistake? David doesn't have pancreatic cancer. He never did. What we initially diagnosed as malignant tumors were actually benign cysts caused by a rare but completely treatable condition called autoimmune pancreatitis. With proper medication, David should live a completely normal, healthy life. Sophia turned to David, expecting to see joy, relief, the happiness of a man who'd been given his life back. Instead, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Panic. That's wonderful news," David said, but his voice was hollow, his face pale for reasons that had nothing to do with illness. The drive home was silent. Sophia's mind raced as pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known existed began falling into place. David's reluctance to discuss the future, his strange anxiety about his improving health, his insistence on keeping their relationship quiet on social media. That evening, Sophia confronted him. "David, we need to talk." "About what?" he asked, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. "About the fact that you don't seem happy about not dying." David's shoulders sagged. "Sophia, I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been lying to me? That this whole marriage is based on a fraud?" "No," David said quickly. "The diagnosis was real. I really thought I was dying. I never lied about that. But you knew, didn't you? You knew there was a chance the doctors were wrong. That's why you chose pancreatic cancer as your story, because it's so often misdiagnosed." David's silence was answer enough. Sophia felt the world shifting beneath her feet. "How long have you been planning this, David? How long have you been looking for a way to manipulate me into marriage?" "Sophia, please, let me explain. Yes, I researched medical conditions that might be misdiagnosed. Yes, I chose doctors who were known to be hasty with terminal diagnoses. But I never expected to actually fall in love with you." "Fall in love with me?" Sophia's voice rose. "You've been obsessed with me for 5 years. You built a shrine to me in your apartment. You follow me around the country. That's not love, David. That's stalking. I know how it looks. But these months we spent together, they've been real. What I feel for you now is real." Sophia stared at this man she thought she'd known, seeing him clearly for the first time. "You manipulated me into the most intimate commitment two people can make. You made me believe I was being kind to a dying man, when really I was being conned by a predator. Sophia, I never meant to hurt you. I wanted a chance. I knew you'd never notice me otherwise. I thought if I could just show you who I really was." "Who you really are?" Sophia laughed bitterly. "Who you really are is someone who lies, manipulates, and deceives to get what he wants. You made me fall in love with a dying man who doesn't exist." "But I do exist," David pleaded. "The man you've been living with, The man who makes you breakfast and listens to your dreams. That's me. That's real. Built on a foundation of lies, Sophia said. Every conversation, every moment of intimacy, every time I opened my heart to you, it was all based on deception. She walked to the window, looking out at the ocean that had seemed so peaceful when she thought she was sharing it with a man who was grateful for every moment. Now it just looked empty. I need you to leave, Sophia said quietly. Sophia, please. I need you to pack your things and leave my house. Tonight, David tried to argue, to explain, to convince her that his feelings were real even if his methods were wrong. But Sophia had heard enough. She'd been manipulated by experts in Hollywood, but never by someone she trusted with her heart. The next day, Sophia's lawyer filed for annulment based on fraud. The media, which had celebrated their fairy tale romance, now turned vicious, dissecting every detail of their relationship and debating whether Sophia had been a victim or fool. But Sophia didn't care about the media circus. She was dealing with something much more devastating. The realization that she'd opened her heart completely for the first time in her adult life, only to discover that the person she'd given it to had never really existed. 6 months later, Sophia saw David on a talk show, promoting a book he'd written about their relationship called Love in the Time of Deception. He'd styled himself as a romantic hero who'd used unconventional methods to win the woman of his dreams, conveniently glossing over the manipulation and fraud. Sometimes love requires courage, David told the host. I took a chance, and for a brief moment, I experienced something real with an extraordinary woman. Sophia turned off the television, disgusted. David had managed to monetize even their heartbreak, turning their relationship into another form of entertainment. But she wasn't the same woman who'd been naive enough to marry a stranger out of compassion. The experience had taught her to trust her instincts, to value honesty above all else, and to recognize the difference between love and obsession. A year later, Sophia met James, a documentary filmmaker who knew her work but wasn't defined by it. He was honest, straightforward, and had never owned a single poster of her movies. When he told her he loved her, she believed him, because by then, she'd learned to tell the difference between authentic emotion and expertly crafted performance. David had given her something valuable, though not what he'd intended. He'd taught her that the most beautiful love stories aren't the ones that make headlines. They're the ones built on truth, respect, and genuine connection. And sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are, so you can choose to walk away and find someone worthy of who you are. Real love doesn't require deception to flourish. It doesn't need manipulation to survive. And it certainly doesn't need to feed on someone else's compassion to exist. True love is brave enough to show up honestly, even if it risks rejection. Because anything built on lies is destined to crumble, leaving only heartbreak and the bitter taste of betrayal in its wake. If you like that story, please subscribe for more. Thank you, and until next time.